and welcome to the show with me, Gillian Gottsel. My guest today is Baptiste Gréve, who is the founder of Orbis Labs. So, Baptiste, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Very nice to see you, Gillian.
Yeah, we're going to have a really interesting conversation because we're going to be talking about the future of social media, which is hot topic in Web3 totally. So it's really exciting. Before we get into your platform that you founded, you have a very interesting background. Tell me a bit about some of the projects you worked on before. In particular, I love the Unimmersive. That like an amazing project with VR. Tell me about that project, for example.
Yeah, university felt like a different life. So I was at the very beginning of the virtual reality, birth in 2015. So back then there was only some, Oculus development kit, and I got to like play with one of them, and I realized, that it was like incredible play. Being like fully immersed in a virtual environment was incredible for gaming, and everyone back then was building gaming experiences. And I thought that, like having access to this kind of technology shouldn't be restricted to gaming, and that it could be an incredible device for education. So what I built within university was basically a sort of, net virtual reality Netflix, but dedicated to education. So you would put on your VR headset, and then you would be able to decide if you wanted to, explore ancient Rome to see how it was 2000 years ago, or travel to the Acropolis of Athens, or even inside the human brain. And everything was being rendered in 3D, and you were able to like move in those like different places exactly like if you were there. And so I did that for 4 years. It was fairly successful. I had like 500,000 people who actually downloaded the University app, which back then was a pretty large number because the virtual reality industry was very small. But the issue is that, it was such a niche market, and education being a niche within a niche, that it was really hard to generate um, nice revenue, being in
Mhm.
this ecosystem, because people were willing to pay for games, but not necessarily willing to pay to travel to historical places. So it was, costing more money to generate those words that we were able to actually generate as revenue. So a few years after launch it, I did that for 4 years. And after 4 years, the company wasn't profitable, so I had to stop it. But that was a super interesting
It's
experience.
a fascinating idea. I love the idea of being able to go in and look at ancient Rome or other examples around the human body. You see that sometimes you see cameras going down in and what it looks like. Because I often wonder, like a surgeon operating on a human body, how do they know where all the bits are? I mean, like that would be my worst nightmare to try and figure out, well, that's the liver or that's the colon or something. So I love it. And maybe you never know, you might come back to it again. But other projects you worked on as well, Edge and Node, which are the company behind the graph. Tell me a bit about your experience there, please.
Exactly, yeah. So I was right before I launched Orbis, I was a product manager at Genode. And so it's exactly as we were saying, Genode is the team that built the Graph protocol, which is a decentralized indexing system for blockchains. And so back then I was responsible for the two main products for the Graph, which were the Graph Explorer that, let indexers take on the network, create or curate, and people discover subgraphs that they might be interested in querying, as well as the Subgraph Studio product, which is the tool that can let developers build and publish subgraphs to the network. And so I was working very closely with the development teams and designers to, come up with great user experiences to make it as easy as possible for people to, go through those different flows.
So that's when you're fully into the whole world of blockchain and Bitcoin at that stage. Um, why did you take your next step into the Orbis lab? So when you're looking at blockchain, you're working in that space, working with crypto, and looking at layer ones. Why did Orbis Labs have to be created? What problem were you addressing?
Yeah, so I think it's funny because we started with Unimersive, and I have to go back there, So basically with Unimersive, I was working very closely with Oculus, right? And Oculus
Mm.
was the brand actually building the headset, and it's a company that was acquired by Facebook. So Oculus was for Facebook when I was there. And basically, one thing that was the sort of final nail in the coffin for Unimersive was that, when Oculus launched the Oculus Quest, which is this super, impressive virtual reality headset. You don't need a computer anymore. Everything can be done with just the headset and the controllers. I spent months getting Unimersive to be ready for the Quest launch. And I was supposed to be there, as a launch partner. And the issue is that a few weeks before the launch, Facebook kind of changed their rules, and they decided that the Quest would be dedicated to gaming experiences, and they would not accept educational content on the Oculus Store, at least for the first few months of the Quest, because they really wanted it to, be the kind of platform dedicated to gaming, like PlayStation or an Xbox. And so I saw this Quest, which was this amazing device, and I saw that University would not, be able to be published on the store for this device. And back then, I was already facing some financial issues. But this sort of like change of rules made me realize how fragile a company is when it's built on the back of a centralized platform, right? And I think it makes sense for Facebook to decide to focus on the gaming because that's where the market was. But as a victim of this, it was really hard. And back then, I would have hoped that users would have been able to vote to decide whether or not University should be published in the Quest or not. It felt really frustrating that only one person was able to make those decisions that could impact dozens of companies. And so that was really the point where I decided to, I was already very interested in the blockchain space at this time, but that was really the point where I decided to sort of dedicate most of my professional work to this specific industry. And then I was able to join ANECDOTES, which was this fascinating professional experience. I worked with some of the smartest people that I ever worked with when I was there. But still, during my world journey there, I was constantly thinking about, how can we decentralize those gigantic social platforms? Can this be built? And if it can, should it be on the blockchain or on something different? And so I was constantly, during the weekend or at night, trying to experiment with some proof of concept to see if we could actually build decentralized social protocols that could be adopted by users. And initially, my first design was building all this on top of a blockchain on a set of smart contracts. But then the issue is that each action on the social network would be a blockchain transaction, right? So users would have to sign a message to confirm the transaction. They would have to wait for transaction times to be completed, which can be a very, friction experience as we were used to, very quick interactions. And so I thought that blockchain wasn't the best technology to build, this decentralized social protocol on top of. And exactly at this point, so almost a year ago, I discovered Ceramic. Right? And Ceramic is the technology that we are using at Orbis. And Ceramic is amazing because it's not a blockchain. It's what we call a decentralized data network. So it has a very different security models than blockchains. And so it doesn't have the friction of, users having to sign messages with their wallet to share something. It doesn't have transaction fees. The write times are extremely fast, almost as fast as you can get on a Web2 experience. And you can have, a very advanced standardization to make sure that posts, shared on the Orbis protocol will look exactly the same if they were shared from application number 1 or application number 2. And so when I discovered Ceramic, I just realized that the technology was perfect. So I fully rebuilt Orbis on top of Ceramic. And I launched it, but back then it was still as a personal project. And as I was, seeing Orbit taking off, I saw that I was really fascinated by the work that I was doing. So I discussed a lot with ANECDOTES, and they were really also interested in the work that I was doing. And so we agreed that it would make a lot of sense for me to pursue this full time. And they also agreed to be the first investor on Orbis. So in April this year, I left ANECDOTES and started to focus really full time on Orbis.
Wow. So this is interesting. You have a personal reason for disliking centralized entities, and you're very polite, I may add, recognizing that it was Facebook's initiative, that was their prerogative, if you like, to do what they did. But the knock-on effect on your business was catastrophic. And then looking at, you're right, because a lot of the problem with when people move from Web 2 to Web 3, there's a lot of signing that goes on. And people don't want to be signing the entire time because that's the biggest problem that gamers have against blockchain games. So this is very interesting. So for you, using the Ceramic, is the Ceramic like a middle layer? Is that how it works? So the activities happen in Ceramic and they're on a blockchain. Explain to me the mechanics.
Yeah, so basically, on a blockchain, you have multiple computers running the sort of blockchain software, right? And what's great is that everyone needs to constantly agree on the state of the blockchain, right? So if there is one transaction going from wallet A to wallet B, and the block is being mined, all of the miners are going to agree that this block was valid. So everyone is constantly agreeing on the state of the network after each block. The issue with that is that you have block times, right? So each block is going to be mined maybe like every 45 seconds or every 15 seconds or every like 12 minutes, whatever. And this is great if you want to transfer assets, right? Because if you the very big problem that blockchains solved was what we call this double spending problem. So if some money is going from like someone to someone else, so that you make sure that the two balances are updated exactly at the same time. And so blockchain has been incredible at solving this problem. But for data, like not assets, for data, you don't necessarily have this double spending problem, right? It's fine if my message is shared on an application at a specific minute and maybe a minute after in one other application, right? So the architecture of Ceramic is very different, where you still have multiple computers running the Ceramic software, and all of those computers can be like connected together, so they're fully open, right? If you look at Facebook servers, for example, or Google servers, they're closed, right? So only people with the right API keys can access it. They're going to be rate limited. With Ceramic, it's really different, where anyone could decide to see, what's the content of the specific streams that are being hosted by the Orbis node on Ceramic, for example. But because Ceramic doesn't have a state, so you don't have every node being forced to agree on the state of the network. Each node can host its specific set of data. So when you write content to Ceramic initially, you just write content to one node. So it's literally, as if you were like calling Facebook servers to share a Facebook post. You're doing exactly the same thing when you share content on Orbis. Initially, it's just shared on the Orbis node on the Ceramic network. But then, like all of the other nodes can discover this content if they want to. And so that gives the ability for anyone to say, I also want to host the Orbis content because I want to display it on my website, and we can't block this. Right, we can block people from actually querying the Orbis node or duplicating the content. And this is how Ceramic is decentralized. So it's built on top of IPFS. Basically, IPFS is used for all of the networking relationships for the different nodes on Ceramic. But it's a very different security model. So you don't have any assets transfer on Ceramic. You don't have a wallet on Ceramic, right? You have your decentralized identity that you can use across multiple applications. So if you log into one application using Ceramic or another application using Ceramic with the same wallet, for example, you're always going to be logged into the same identity, right? Whereas in Web2 right now, if you log in with your Facebook account or with your Google account, it's two different identities.
Yeah.
Ceramic, it's very different. And then you can perform actions with the same identity. So the goal, Ceramic has this vision that we fully agree with. They call it the dataverse, instead of the metaverse. It's the dataverse where users can bring their data from one application to another, and all of those applications can be interconnected together. So if you send a message using Orbis, for example, from one application, the recipient can view it using a fully different application, right? Because it's using the same protocol, which is Orbis built on top of Ceramic. Whereas right now in Web2, it's not possible, right? You can't send a message from Telegram and have the recipient read it on WhatsApp. Everyone must be using the same application. But in this Web3 social landscape that we're envisioning, it's going to be completely different, where your family can share some posts on Instagram and decide that your identity should be able to have access to it. And then no matter which application you're using, you will be able to view the content that they're sharing with you. So you don't have to be forced to follow Instagram recommendations algorithm or Twitter's recommendations algorithm. You can really pick the application that you prefer, but you can still access the same data using multiple applications. So that's really the vision that we're pushing toward.
And then tell me, just go back to the digital identity. So this is formed from the wallet. So it's unique. Tell me about how important that is. There's a unique identity. And can you also disclose different parts of your identity depending on which application you're using?
Yeah, exactly. So basically, your identity can be different things on Ceramic. Right now, the most common thing to create your decentralized identity on Ceramic is to use your crypto wallet. So it can be an Ethereum wallet or Solana wallet, and soon a Cosmos or a Tezos wallet. So you can use multiple different wallets to create your identity, right? So for my personal account on Orbis, for example, I'm using my Ethereum wallet. And so every time that I sign in with my wallet to an application's built on top of Ceramic or Orbis, I will be logged into the same decentralized identity. And then this identity can have some, data attached to it. So it can be the history of all of the posts that I shared or my conversations, for example. But you don't necessarily want all of your social activity to be public for everyone, even if you want it to be decentralized, right? For example, if I send a message to my coworkers or to some specific partners using the Orbis protocol, I don't want those messages to be visible for everyone, but I still want them to be decentralized because there is this thing like being able to access those messages no matter which application you're using. And so for this, we are using another protocol named LEAD protocol. And basically what LEAD protocol is doing is they help us encrypt the data and with a set of access control conditions, right? So if I send you a message using Orbis, for example, the message is going to be decentralized. It's going to be stored on Ceramic, but it's going to be encrypted, and only with the rules being that only our two identities can actually decrypt the content, right? So no matter which application you're using to access this content, as long as you log in with your specific decentralized identity, you can decrypt the content. And so you can have this private information, being replicated to multiple, different use cases. So, for example, one thing that we are working on is to be able to attach some specific information privately to your profile. So, for example, attaching your email address to your decentralized identity, and then when you log into an application will be able to say, okay, do you grant me the authorization to access your email address? And if you say yes, we will be able to decrypt this. If you say no, then they will never be able to decrypt this, right? So it's going to be really users deciding which kind of identity they want to open to the applications that they are using, instead of being the applications, deciding, which kind of data they want to use from.
Interesting. So devs are using Orbis Labs to basically integrate Web3 into their applications. Is that how it's working?
So most of the projects building on top of Orbis right now are already Web3 projects, right? So they can be like NFT marketplaces, they can be, like NFT collections, building, decentralized social experiences. They can be governance products, building decentralized governance systems. And so what they're doing is they are using the Orbis SDK to build social features within their existing application, right? So it's going to be a marketplace, for example, using Orbis to integrate direct messages, a direct message feature within their application. So instead of building it from scratch, we will use the Orbis SDK for buyers and sellers to be able to communicate together. If you're an NFT collection, some of them are building, complete sort of, social 2D universe branded with their NFT collection, and people can travel in their different world and access specific social features. And all of those social features are going to be built with Orbis. They have like social profiles, followers, relationship, etc. fully built on Orbis. And for decentralized governance products, they're going to use Orbis for all of the posts and all of the discussions. And instead of having all of those discussions be stored on a centralized server, all of them are going to be decentralized. So we can prove that a specific identity actually shared something using Ceramic. It's not only stored on a centralized database. And so usually, like, for us, what we're seeing so far, it's the perfect use case is existing Web3 application integrating Orbis social features to make their app even a better place for their users. But at some point, as we progress, and especially as we go into next year, we are going to focus on also targeting Web2 applications. And so for this, instead of using only the wallet to create your decentralized identity, we are working hard to be able to get people to log into Orbis using their Google account or their Twitter account or their Facebook account, and then their decentralized identity can be linked to the 3 different platforms. So you can say, okay, I can control my decentralized identity with my Google account, my Twitter account, or my Facebook account. And then like those Web2 applications can also use Orbis social features. So it's going to be the same value, where instead of building decentralized messages from scratch or social feeds from scratch or commenting system from scratch, you would be using Orbis to participate into this like global dataverse experience, and also to save some previous development time. Yeah,
I love that term. So also just to touch base with you, you're blockchain agnostic, but you are working on Ethereum, Polygon, and Solana. Obviously, with the recent news with FTX, is there a worry for you about the Solana ecosystem, or does it not really touch what you're doing?
No, so what we were seeing, I mean, the FTX story is really sad because it's going to have a lot of people like lose confidence in the crypto ecosystem, where it's really a failure of a centralized bank, built on that was using blockchain for trading, but not necessarily a failure of blockchain themselves. So I think like the Solana ecosystem is really strong. It's made of great builders that don't want necessarily to leave the space. And very recently they were having the Breakpoint conference, and I think they exploded all of their attendance records. So they had, I think, like 30% more attendance that they had the year before. So I think like I don't have any worries about the Solana or even Ethereum ecosystem. They're going to survive. The people building in this industry are really passionate by the work that they are doing, and a lot of them are going to stay in a bear market, in a bull market, because that's really they're doing what they love to do. And I mean, I know that for us at all this, it's also the case. There wouldn't be any other industry that I would like to work on, no matter the price of Ethereum or the price of Solana. And it's going to be the case for a lot of builders in this space. So I'm not worried about any of those communities.
Oh, that's interesting. And it's kind of what I'm hearing too as well. It's the community and the build. It's not, and you say yourself, the FTX was a failure of a centralized trading platform, which yeah, quite different. Last question for you. I'm told that when the devs start working in Orbix, they become really evangelical and they love what you're doing. Why? Why do you think that is?
Yeah. So that's right. So this is really something that we were seeing, like a lot of developers that started building on Orbis when we launched the SDK in July, or still building on Orbis right now and are sharing like really great stuff about this. I think that, one thing that is very important for us is that we constantly use the technologies that we create, right? So we created the first indexing system for Ceramic, and we are constantly using it with Orbis. We created the Orbis SDK for developers to interact with Orbis as a protocol, and we were constantly using the Orbis SDK, the different products that we were building. So we are kind of the first users of this decentralized social product that we are building. And so when you're in this kind of situation, it really helps you, improve the product and make sure that it fits your users' need. And I think that was really helpful in, making this SDK as easy to use as possible, because when you're using it constantly, you have to face your own problems and solve them. So I think that's one of the big reasons. And also the technical choices that we made of building Orbis on top of Ceramic and not on top of a traditional blockchain, I think was a really good technical choice, because it just makes the developer experience way better, right? When users don't have to sign any message to perform actions, they don't have to sign any transaction fees. Frequently we have end users discovering Orbis via our web application, for example, and sometimes they ask like, what's the magic? How can it be decentralized and at the same time like as easy to use? There isn't any transaction fees. It's almost instantaneous. When I share content, I get read, it's automatically published, and this is due to the technical choices that we made of building on top of Ceramic. And so I think it's going to be one of the best competitive advantage of all this.
Cool. And then, sorry, where can people find you if they want to find out more about you? Is it YouTube? Is your website? What's the best thing? Telegram?
Yeah, so or anyone can learn more about Orbis at orbis.club. I'm fairly active on Twitter as well. So my handle is Baptiste Gréve on Twitter. So anyone can find me there, or on the Orbis web application. I'm constantly there. So it's going to be a great way to reach me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today. It's fascinating. And I love that new term, the dataverse. Dataverse. That's a new one. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you, Jillian. That was a pleasure.